We have our guest already seated this hour. Kivutha Kibwana is a lecturer at the Daystar University School of Law. And you wonder why we're only giving him that title. Well, okay. Obviously, he's done a lot more than that. And we actually referenced you in a conversation that we had between 6 and 7 o'clock. And we'll probably get into that a little bit more. But, Prof, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here.
Karibu sana. Good to have you here in the room again. And I said we referenced you earlier because we were talking about, when you see that things are falling apart, when you see that things are not working, you can either decide to remain part of the whole melee, or you can decide, you know what, let's collapse everything and let's build it again. And that was the reference that we had to you in terms of what happened with, Makwene County and the assembly, the county assembly. So we're getting into an interesting conversation this hour because there's so many balls up in the air at the same time. And we're asking questions about, where do we go from here? But even as we do that, we welcome you into the Situation Room again. And CT has gone to a different African country this week. He will tell you what today's proverb is, and we would love to hear your insights about that.
Yes, we are in the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria. It's an interesting country in this respect. I mean, historically, the people who lived in Algeria are the people we refer to as Berbers. But then there were several migrations of Arabs into that particular region. But even before then, Phoenicians, Romans, all manner of people, Vandals, had actually somehow crisscrossed into that particular region. So there was an interesting mixture. But even as the Arabs and the wave of Arabs came in, the French also came in with their brand of colonization. The Italians came, the Spaniards came. But many people don't understand this. By the same token, in earlier times, Africans had also lived in Spain. Africans had also lived in Italy. And there's a lot of civilization in many of those parts of the world that are actually African in origin.
Yes.
So it's just how human beings have interacted over time. Algeria is an interesting country, typical of the interests that African countries have in this respect. Mm-hmm. What we remember and what we speak of now is the legacy of colonialism and what it is that it bequeathed to this particular country and how it affects the things that go on in the country. And I think the proverbs that come from every country more or less speak to a lot of the things in very brief summary of the things that the country has or what it is that is a reflection of their culture. The proverb for today: the one whose belly is full of straw is not afraid of fire. The person whose belly is not full of straw is not afraid of fire.
Okay. I was just wondering how a belly could be full of straw, so that one is afraid of fire.
Yes.
But I would imagine if you have not done things that necessarily you think can hurt you, particularly if they come to the limelight, then you wouldn't be afraid. But if you have done things that, you don't want people to know, so you don't go near them, you don't want it revealed because that can hurt you.
Yes.
But it's a very, very interesting proverb because one would not know how you would get, straw
in your belly.
Or tied to your belly. Maybe tied to your belly, I don't know.
Consider consumption in its broadest possible way. It doesn't necessarily mean the physical eating,
yes,
which eventually what you consume ends up in your belly.
Yes.
But it is what you partake of, what you're part of.
What you may have done.
Yes.
What you have done.
Yes. When you say, I feel it in my belly,
yes,
it's or I feel fear in my chest.
Yes.
How exactly does fear land itself on your belly or on your chest? How does that happen? It's a metaphorical way of speaking, but it speaks to, and you were spot on. There are certain tender things that you would rather not have spoken of. And so you avoid situations where they might come to light.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Deep.
Quite.
Yes.
Quite. And speaking of deep, it seems that with very many things, day after day, it seems the depth of the matters that Kenya is in continues. When we look at what's going on with governance, when we look at the public outcry, when we are in a place where many questions are being asked about alliances that have been made, or people who were part of a government who made Kenyans think that things were going in a certain direction, have come out in their numbers to talk about the fact that, government is not doing what it said it should do, or what it said it would do, or what it should do. So one starts to wonder that if you had one person, Prof, coming out to say that, okay, things are not all right, then perhaps you would think that, okay, maybe it was just one person. But when you have person after person, I think we're doing an average of about a person per month now, coming out to talk about the fact that things are not doing all right, then one must wonder in which direction is the country headed. And there are many more examples of what we see. I mean, what can we not call on? We saw in the western part of the nation just the other week that we see another possible religious cult. And then the weekend has not come to an end and we see a possible other one at the coast again. And we see alcohol abuse all over the place. We see people killing women. We can go on and on. We see overdependency on drugs. We see Kenya's debt shooting through the roof and us taking more and more. And we have to ask the question, where are we headed?
Well, I think what you have described is obviously very worrying. And when, for example, one addresses the question of people who are in government and they leave and then they are, as the expression says, spilling the beans, you ask yourself, does this portend of like almost a collapse? Because these are people in the know. And so when they come out and, maybe within a short time, somebody else comes out, it's like they're running away from a house that is burning. And that, therefore, should, worry us. Of course, the question is asked, some of the things that they're saying, how come they couldn't say them before? But the rejoinder is, well, they're saying them. And so you have simply to ask yourself, is this true or not true? But of course, ordinarily, again, if you are in the public space, you're supposed to commit yourself to some, Official Secrets Act and stuff. Therefore, there are certain things, you don't say. But we are living in different times. It's not those times when people died with secrets and stuff. But I think the upshot of that first question is, if I was in charge of this country, I would be worried. Because it means that anything that you do will always come to light, because there are people who will say it, and because they have been with you, then we believe them. That's what they're saying in terms of the corruption, in terms of what it's a fact. But what is even more worrying is the other picture you painted, a desperation in the country of people thinking that it's only God who can help them, and of course those who are the religious leaders of those cults exploit the people, because the people are very, very desperate. The children or the young people, like in the universities, you get kids who are not able to afford food. You get, very, very desperate situations. And so the alcohol, the mental, health questions. So I think it comes to a situation where you ask, what should be done? It's almost like a country needing somebody to some real spiritual person to come and say, you're in trouble and we need to exercise. I don't know, you need to do some serious stuff. But the country is definitely not doing well, and therefore we must ask, when you reach a point like this, maybe with even looming inability to pay our debts, our public debts, health situation being very difficult for most people, how do you reverse it? And therefore, how does the leadership that has committed to take care of us, how does it provide a solution? Because it's almost like they're getting to a situation where they don't know what the solutions can be.
Is it that bad? Is it really that bad? And many would say, well, these are normal things that happen. Every now and then you get into a rut, you can't pay your debt. Every now and then the things that you plan to do wouldn't really work. And at least it's the at least mentality that there are some nations that are in a total complete funk. But here Kenya is at least able to make it by. You can stumble down the slope, but you'll make it to the end at the end of the day. Is it that bad, or are we sometimes getting to the place where it feels good to continue to commiserate over things?
I think it's bad because, like, in this space where I am now, I have occasion to take a border, to take a taxi, and those people tell you that in a day when they ferry many people from one place to the other, nobody tells them that they like what's happening. They feel that they have economic ability. They feel safe. They feel there are public services, both at the county level and the national level. So I think that interaction with a lot of people tells me that the situation is quite bad. And, sometimes we can live in a fool's paradise thinking that this is normal. And until now, something happens and then there is a real collapse. And that's my fear.
Now, Prof, you see, we live in very interesting times in this country, because here we talk in terms of the government seems as though it does not know what to do. Pretty much it is so much to handle, yet the responsibility of taking care of 55 million Kenyans lies squarely on them. We talk in terms of debt of the country. We are at 11 trillion shillings, which is way above what has even been stipulated in terms of our ceiling. It continues to go high, yet every other trip outside, the government is still borrowing. And it is a government that said, we will not borrow some more, we will fix the debt crisis in the country. Which begs the question, who should Kenyans look up to? Because at the end of the day, Kenyan will go back to the government and say, you told us to fix it, you need to fix it. But if we don't know where to go, then what's left for us in this country?
I think the question that you've raised of debt, public debt, is again extremely worrying because we are told that when the government gets like 100 shillings, it uses 70 to pay debt.
Yes.
And it has 30 left for the national government salaries and for development, for the counties. So there isn't anything really left for development. And when you ask government for development, it's like you're milking a stone. Because, after most of the money going to the first charge, which is the debt, then there is hardly anything left. And I remember in the one-party era, in the 80s and a bit of the 90s, the economy was so depressed and the government was really unable to supply services, supply, development to the people. And so they go back to the ladies, the merry-go-rounds. The church was very, when there are hospitals and schools and so on, you could rely. So that actually you went out of relying on the public space so that you rely on yourself. And, today going to that situation where people, just decide the government can't help me, therefore, I'm just going to help myself. Of course, because some money goes to the counties may try to do something. But again, even there, they pay 70% salaries and, going out benchmarking and so on, and 30% for development. So you get to a space where you're asking, who will help you when you don't have money to go to the hospital, you don't have, school fees and so on. And that's why the young people, I think, get angry. And they say, we have a government which is supposed to help us. We have problems like those who are in the universities, paying the school fees and so on. And therefore, people begin to come onto the streets. And, one really hopes that because we are approaching June, one would ask, can again young people say nothing has been sorted out? So actually, that question of, if the government cannot do what the government should do for you, what do you do? Do you say, okay, we wait 2027 and we look for another government? And even that other government, what guarantee is there that the debts, they are going to deal with them so that we can get a reprieve? So I think it's a difficult question.
But Prof, I have to ask this question because it seems to be the question we keep asking all the time with reference to our country. Whether it is the county governments or the national government, how do you determine whether the leadership, either the national level or the county level, are determined to actually bring about the change that they know the people need? Because everyone talks about and they impute sincerity in wanting to ensure that the citizenry get a fair shake of it. But that seems to be the beginning and the end of that particular story, because one doesn't see the manifestation of even the 30% that remains. If we were to look at it in terms of figures and ask what they could do, even that we have difficulties determining where it is that money went and if it actually did what was said it would do. Because how do you budget? How do you set aside money for projects, engage people to do these projects, they complete the projects, and you don't pay them, but you budgeted for it, money was put aside? And we have a situation where what we call pending bills continuously increasing. Monies which are colossal in amount and which, if we're in the economy, would bring about change. And this is money owed to citizens.
I think the problem is legally, you are not supposed to authorize anything which is not the budget. It's a crime.
Yes.
Under Kenyan law. Yes. So that if you give me a job, if I'm a contractor and you give me a job and there is no budget for that job, someone should take you to court, whoever you are. But of course, we don't necessarily follow, those laws. And even this idea that you can legally contract somebody and then at the end of when they have finished their job, you don't pay them and you don't feel nothing. Or even the idea that before you can pay them, they need to give you some kickback. Or before even they get the job, they need to pay for the job. They buy the job. You see, this is really some of the culture which is taking us back and back and back all the time. Because sometimes the people who, like us, when we get into government, and I have my own private company, I run it well. I order things, I pay for them. I'm very strict with the people who work, in that company. And so I do the good thing in my private space. But when I come to the public space, I don't think that I should, use the same strategy to really do good. So it is this thinking that when you go to the public space, you are just going there to advantage yourself.
Yeah.
And if it's a whole team, which is doing these things, and, when you do, even if you are caught or you are suspected, they protect each other. So really, it's a culture that we must shed off, because if we don't, we'll continue going into the hole.
What really happens, though, Prof? And I think we often ask the question that very few individuals do we see who would say that they were one person going in, remain the same person going in. That whether we like it or not, that government is the driver of economic activity. It is the driver of economic development. It is the driver of security. It is the driver of insurance that your people are fed, healthy, and thriving. We can try to say that it's everybody's collective responsibility, fine. But at the end of the day, the one that will make sure that these things happen is government. To ensure that there are systems in place and that these systems are working, it is a government function. We know this. But for some reason, when we don't see the action that should follow the function. And we often ask ourselves, what is the problem? What happens? Whereby we have beautiful plans. You talked about benchmarking. It happens. There are countries who come here from West Africa, Southern Africa, Central Africa, come to Kenya, as an example, to benchmark. But the implementation of these things doesn't happen. And we talk about the money not being there, but for some reason the money is there for other things. So what really happens to people, and what happens to that activity which you would imagine that they would engage in when they get there? What really goes wrong?
I think a fundamental question is, what is our concept of government? Because the way you have described what should be done is the correct way of, doing government. But if people get into government because they know, or they have heard, or they think that you go there to enrich yourself, then they will not do the correct thing. Because just like I tried to point out, if it was your own enterprise, you're very methodical in terms of making it work so that you can be prosperous. But when we get into the government, we don't have that concept of how do you work. Probably with some exceptions, on the continent. Sometimes we talk about Kibaki as somebody who, felt that when people gave him leadership, he should, arudisha mkono, he should do something about it. But I think even from the political parties, sometimes when you want to go through a political party to be elected, sometimes you're told, you need to give some money. And even after you're elected, some political parties will still tell you that every month, some money is needed. So even these political parties, first of all, in terms of choosing people, it's not on the basis of a thorough interview. Do you understand, what this party is about? Do you understand if you want to be MCA, what you do as MCA? Do you understand all those things? No. Sometimes it's maybe you have the money, maybe you control a certain constituency and therefore you will get votes for your party. So we choose badly because we don't seem to have a criteria as, for example, political parties and even the people themselves, because they will say, okay, this person is from our clan, this person is from our tribe, and even when that person doesn't deliver, next time, this person is still from our tribe, from our clan. This person has given us some money, even when they give you they give you 500 bob, and then they go away. You see, so I think we need to really talk about what is our concept of government. What does the government do? What do we tell people will do? And to be sure that we can be asked, but you haven't done, what you promised us. So I think it's a fundamental issue of, if you really asked some of the people who are in power, what are you in power for? All right. They might think it's a rude question. Why do you ask that? They are in power because they have been elected and they know what to do, but they will not do it.
If it's not in their own interest.
It is not in their own interest because they want to do something for themselves.
Of course.
And when you ask about, Professor, which way Kenya, the government itself goes to the people to give promises on what they will do, the reason why they get to government. But then again, there are other institutions that also get into power. We talk about the National Assembly, the Senate, the members of County Assembly, and their role to oversight the government and making sure that everything is done right by the people. But here we have a situation where you find that Parliament says it has been captured We in this show say you've not been captured, you've ceded your power to oversight. You decide not to work for the people. And we also have in every budget policy statement that is given, it is planned for. But every other time the president goes somewhere, gives promises. And these are promises outside the budget that the country has done. So in terms of other institutions in making sure that it is done right by Kenyans, let everybody do themselves, the justice system to work, the oversight bodies to do their work. Why does it seem as though everybody wants to sing song, to clap for the master instead of doing their job?
I think when one looks at our constitution, it is actually quite strong in terms of allocating the roles. If it is parliament, parliament, as you have correctly stated, should be able to, the National Assembly should be able to hold the executive, the national executive accountable. Senate and the county assemblies should hold counties, into accountability. But on the whole, Parliament, cedes its authority because, first of all, many of them are controlled by whoever is the kingpin. And so if the kingpin tells them to do, certain things, because they know they will need a ticket in the coming season, so they normally will accept. If it is the National Assembly, one of the ways that it is controlled, they get this CDF. And then they go and do monkey business with it. And then there is a file. So if you try to assert yourself, you're told you are on slippery ground. So that is one thing. And of course, those allowances, because sometimes when there is a particular vote or somebody is being impeached and so on, you hear money is flying left and right. So the people don't do whatever they are supposed to do. They get some of this money, so they go to the constituency. They are trying to give it to people to mollify them. But in terms of their core duties, you find that there is a problem. If you interrogate closely, you might find in many counties the MCAs will be given contracts or their proxies. So when that happens, of course, this person will not oversight. The governor will not oversight, whoever. So it is really this fundamental issue of how do we enforce our constitution? We have this constitution. It is a strong constitution, but up to now, we have not again come into saying that we need to implement it. We need to do the things that the Constitution says we need to do. So if it's the independent, the controller, the control of budget, the Auditor General, those are trying to do their jobs. But even as they do so, you find that they're under attack, as if they're doing the wrong thing. And unfortunately, historically, even Edward Okoh before and Agnes Odhiambo, at least those two officers have tried to do us proud. But, many of the constitutional commissions, they've been captured because they're captured through how they are recruited. Like you are recruited and by the executive, the executive has a lot of say, and then you do what the executive tells you, and that is like the problem we're having with the Judicial Service Commission now. So more or less, it is the judiciary which is, even when they have also certain problems, but that's the body that is trying to say that we need to do what you're supposed to do. And therefore, getting this culture of when you're in government, there is a constitution, there are laws, you're supposed to do what they say. That's something that we are still grappling with.
Professor, you once declared an interest in being elected as president.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you two questions. One, why did you want to become president? That's one. Second one, if you were indeed president, what would you have done different?
What would I do about?
What would you have done differently? Because you had an idea of what you wanted to do. What would you have done? Instead of it being general, Just 4 things that you would have done differently. But start with, why did you want to become president?
Well, I think it's still a complicated situation because on the whole, people ask me if I could be. Because even in the 90s, when the opposition was struggling with unity, I was asked to be a compromise candidate.
Yes.
Because those days I was the spokesperson of the pro-democracy movement during those days that we wanted a constitution from Moi. Again, 2022, people said, maybe we have seen a little of what you have done in Makueni. Therefore, why don't you become president ukipenda na usipende? And I think there must have been some occasion. There might have been some occasion when I said I can be a president and I even, I don't have to be paid. I just need food for my family and stuff. But on a serious matter, you see, if you really say that corruption will not be tolerated, because I tried that in Makueni. And I said, even if you want to do what to me, even kill me, as in the county assembly, I was almost shot, and some people were shot.
Yes.
I said that we have not come here so that, we take this little money, which should go to the common people. And even up to now, as a county in Makueni, we are one of the counties where we had open contracting, so that all information about contracts is available to the public, and it is automated, the information, so anybody can come and look to see whether there is cheating and stuff like that. So that is one thing, and even in the 90s we did a lot of research on corruption. We did a book, Anatomy of Corruption. So that is one thing, if you were to do that, could help. And that is something that I thought, even when I tried to apply to be chair of the Anti-Corruption Commission, the EAC, I thought that, I could perhaps help my country, our country. Again, I think when you decide that institutions should work, so that you don't do everything as a one-man or one-woman show. Sure. If you allow institutions to work, first of all, you recruit people on merit, and then you allow institutions to work. Then you get a lot of things done, by people, and you trust them and you delegate, so that you have a functional, government. I think that is one thing that I would do, because even I sourced for people in the cabinet, in the county cabinet. I sourced for people in the chief officers. Some of them I didn't know, because we said we want the best. Let us, get some of the best people. So that is something that I would do. One thing that I'm very passionate about is the youth thing. Because these 70% of people, they are really in a bad place. And I think in terms of getting a national youth empowerment program, a Marshall Plan, that is also something that can be done. I have written a little bit about that. That would be something that, had to be done. And I think even in terms of like the business, the private sector, so many times they don't want even to talk when they are hurt by the government, when they're not being paid. They are afraid. They think that if you talk, you'll be targeted. I think I would, do what it takes to create this environment where people can really invest, where people can therefore create jobs. I think that's something that, one would do. There are many things that I think one can do, and therefore I think I've answered your first question. And the second question?
My second question was, well, you answered part of it. I said, if you are president today, 4 things that you would do. Because as a president, you tell people, this is what I am going to do. Not what I would like to do. No. This is what I am going to do.
Yeah, and of course you do that on the basis of what they want done.
Yes.
Because I would imagine, like what President Ruto did, he went around the 47 counties,
Yes.
sourcing a manifesto. What became is manifesto. But so when you do that, you say, what were you told? Like Kibaki was told education. He began, a lot of the primary school education, he said, free and so on. So, as I have said, the corruption thing, I have said,
prioritizing youth,
institutions, the youth, implementing the constitution. Actually, that is one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
I would, say that we have this constitution. This is our basic charter. It must work.
Okay. When you talk about institutions, Prof, everywhere, institutions in the private, there is something that happens in terms of repercussion if you do not do what you're supposed to do.
Sure.
Whether you're talking at the family level, whether you're in school. In fact, school is a fantastic example. You don't get something done, you're punished. There is a punishment that comes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
There are repercussions for not doing what you're meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody will hold you accountable at any point. But here we are doing this dance with government, the people and the government. It's a dance, but nobody's ever landing this plane.
And a weird dance.
A really weird one, and you're not even getting lucky at the end of the day, really. That you're asking the question, why is it that we can get away with murder over and over and over again, and that nothing is happening?
Mm-hmm.
That we see right there in plain sight that things are not being done as they're supposed to, and it's okay. We just kind of go along with the thing and we just continue dancing. If I was in a family setting and I as a child did something wrong, there would be repercussions.
Immediately.
Immediately.
Mm-hmm.
If you walk down the street today and you were to steal a loaf of bread from a shop, there would be repercussions.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen mob justice happen to people who decide that they're going to steal till one day somebody says, this is enough. Put a tire, burn the thing. It happens. But for some reason, when it comes to the people who have been given delegated responsibility, delegated sovereignty in terms of what they're supposed to do, we seem to be okay. Steal our millions, continue making our zika, don't educate our children, no problem. What? Why? Why are there no repercussions?
What you're describing, of course, is exactly what happens. And I get the sense that there is significant bottled anger, like what erupted from the young people. Yeah. And I can feel it also as far as, the older people, are concerned. And I think that is normally a very serious matter, because even 2007-8, when you have an eruption, you can easily, get a country consumed by, that anger. So this idea of impunity, because it comes back to, like, whether people are in government or in opposition, when they do wrong things, they protect each other. And as a consequence, you do something, and after a while, you're even told, that your money which had been taken by EACC, get it back, and all that kind of stuff. So because they do that, and then they go back, and they tell their communities, the wrong things happening because we are not in power. When we are going to be in power, nothing, everything will be okay.
But isn't it systems? Sorry, Prof. But it's systems. And I'm just looking at it. It's interesting, but we do have headlines. This was 2 days ago. Brazil's former president arrested and ordered to begin his prison sentence.
Yes.
Not, please, can we have a chat? No. Or we can't find you. Ordered. Please come sit here with us because of the things that you actually did. A trial was had. He was found guilty, and he says, you know what? You're actually going to serve your sentence. How many more do we find from Korea? Just the other day, former president jailed, being sent. Singapore. This is Singapore that everybody shouts about, that says, oh, we should follow Singapore and be just as economically viable as they are. Sent a former president to jail to serve a sentence because of what they did. There are very many examples whereby the system is so strong.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter whether you are the person who's stealing a loaf of bread or you are the person who sat in the top seat as the executive. You do something wrong, you will pay for it. There are repercussions. But again, we seem to, it's a bit too far to say that the executive could do something wrong. Oh my God. It's like, how can we ever say that the executive has done something wrong?
South Korea, a sitting president.
The sitting president, exactly. Sitting president.
Yes.
So and when we say it, it's like we're met with such surprise, like, oh my God, how dare you say a president could do something wrong? Where do we go wrong? It's like we cannot imagine that systems can be so strong that they can work, whereby you cannot get away with espionage. And it is espionage within our walls, within our boundaries, that it happens every day. On which economically viable country will you be paying out of 100 shillings or $100, 70 towards debt? Economically viable. Which? Where? Tell me where it happens. Anywhere in the world.
It's not easy. You see, so I think in terms of like getting ourselves out of that hole of where impunity rules, where for a long time since 1963, there is this culture that has been created. I mean, starting with when people in government were allowed to do business and to, do business with government and to do all those kinds of things. So, fortunately, we have a constitution which can stop or minimize most of those things if we followed it and if we followed, rule of law. And that means for me that you have to get a leadership that realizes we are going the wrong way and we are going to collapse and to, turn around how we do things. And even the people themselves, in terms of civic education, for them to really say, you can't do, things that are going to jeopardize, all of us. Because that's the other thing, that if the people say, okay, they will take, maybe they'll bring a little something to us. So it has to be a complete change.
Do people have the staying power to keep governments accountable? We saw what happened last year, and speculation or opinion was that we would only sustain it for so long. But have we gotten to the point, and we can talk about Kenya as case in point, but in African nations, do we as the people who are the sovereign have the staying power to actually keep government accountable, whether it's going to be blood on the streets, whether it's going to be a daily insistence, whether it's going to be going to the very basic level of government and insisting on accountability? Do we have the staying power, or can we make noise for a little bit and then, go back to status quo?
I'm afraid that when you push people, particularly young people, too much to the wall, to the extent that you are shooting them and they're still coming to demonstrate. I think that next time around, if they decide that nothing has changed and they come onto the streets, I think it will not be possible to stop them. And that is why I believe that the government, those people up there, require to really have a rethink about what is it that must be done so that there is reprieve. Particularly, when you listen to some of these young people, particularly, for them and for all of us, like this, even this health thing that has caused a lot of problems, and when we didn't do NHIF, properly, build it on NHIF, like in Makueni, even as a sequel answer to the question you asked me, we did universal health care for 500 shillings per household. And you could get, chemotherapy. Even people came for COVID to be treated in Makueni for 500 bob. The ones who are citizens, who are residents of the, So, I
for
think
500 bob.
Yes. 500 bob per year.
Per year.
Per year household. Yeah. And when you are
how many households registered?
When you are old like me, after 65, you didn't even pay the 500.
What sorcery is
so
this?
It was the 1 million people. They come to hospital, you inpatient, you see a doctor, you get your drugs, all those things happen.
It happened. That is why people were trooping to Makueni to benchmark.
Yes.
Yeah.
When we're trying to figure out this universal healthcare, how to go about it. So we actually had the example, isn't it?
And they got even the minister for health who worked with us. They got him to the national level.
They did.
Yes, through Kagwe.
Yes.
Mutai.
Yes.
So, but really to say that I would be afraid of the coming anger. And particularly in 2027, if the people believe that whoever says they have won, they have not won, then we are going to have trouble, I think. And I don't want that trouble.
But Prof,
myself.
We talk. You talk about implementation and failure of it. If we talk about it, if you look at, let's just take Makwelika County for example, it is an area that is rich in fruits. You made a decision. Let's create a factory so that we can add value. That is implementation on a project that you had. You talk about an area that has been dry for a very long time. You decided, let us have sand dams. What has that done? The people of Makwene, especially farmers, have been able to grow their crops and know where they're taking that. When we come to extrapolate it to the national government, there's all this implementation that needs to be done, but for some weird reason, it's not being implemented. Is it that the national government cannot implement, or they choose not to?
Is it a weird reason, or is it just people just not doing what they're supposed to?
Well, I think first of all, you have to ask, how does the county government and the national government, work to deliver together? And even counties, how do they work like neighboring counties to deliver together? And even ask yourself, how do you deliver so that a big number of people get benefit? Because if you choose some of these pilot things, you say that we are piloting, 500 people to have chicken. We are piloting, a bit of this and that. So you have to ask yourself, what are the things that when they are done, they make a difference in terms of how the people and the economy is moving forward. And so, to some extent, what we hear, for example, is happening in Burkina Faso. And of course, because I have not been there, I cannot talk very authoritatively. But we can see very targeted from the media examples of something is done where a large number of people, like an example. Suppose, the county government, the national government, the county government said, we want to take National Youth Service to the counties so that each county, you have so many kids coming to it after the initial period of a few, like what actually is happening in Muranga. Then they get into, training for things that will give them, self-employment. And you say that, 5,000 each county. And there's money to do that. Instead of, taking money, saying so many billions, something that we don't know what it is. So it is also a determination to put whatever little money we have into things that are going to make a difference, and not put money into where you are going to get your 10%, your 20%, your 30%. I don't know what the percentage is now.
Nowadays. In 10 seconds, what would be your advice today to government to salvage what little could be salvaged?
I would tell government, because we don't necessarily want the government to, we don't want it not to help us. So I would say you need to pause and ask 3 years down the road what's happening. And if possible, get a conversation, a national conversation with your people. Because we really don't want also the government to get desperate, so that at the end, the government says, if you think we can't have our 5 years again, we will sink all of us. We don't want to get into that situation. So I think this is the time when, as a country, you pause and you say, can we have a genuine conversation? And hopefully it is structured in such a way that particularly the young people will want to get engaged, because now many people are saying, we don't want even to engage this government because we don't believe it can change.
Good words to end on. Kivutha Kibwana, thank you always for being here to share those insights with us. A long road ahead, but there are certain things that we can actually do and do now.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be in this situation.
Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.